Man, I'm trying to look at the 40s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 ran 4.44 or better. And if you want to compare that to Jalen Rager's year, he ran a 4.47, which is fast, which is plenty fast enough. So once you hit that default level, then the other stuff is far more important. The stuff I was talking about, the route running, the ability to catch the football, as we know in Philadelphia, and, football IQ and all the stuff Nick Sirianni talks about.
You got Mac and Mac, John McMullen and Jody McDonald, hanging with you as we get that much more ready for 40 times and vertical leaps and bench presses and the like. It is the Olympics of testing for prospective pro football, college, no longer players that J-Mac, I watched so many hours yesterday. I went down a wormhole watching this stuff that I really started to think, am I really learning anything? And you do it because you love the sport. You want to know what the Eagles are going to do and the like, but the positions are checked off the boxes. They're checked off the box. And I started to realize, are the Eagles really going to take a quarterback? Do you really think so, Jody? The answer is no. Are the Eagles going to take a wide receiver in the first round with one of their 3 picks if they make all their 3 picks? The answer was maybe at best. Are the Eagles going to take a running back? No chance, no shot, no way. Now, they may take a running back 4th, 5th, 6th overall running back taken, but it's not going to be till the 3rd round. So I started to get depressed watching the combine yesterday. How sick am I?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you're sick. I think you're sick if you're taking it seriously, and living and dying with it. I've seen people do that. And, that part of it is, I
was going ooh and ah. I was oohing and eyeing at the TV yesterday. Maybe I am too involved.
As I do every morning, I take my dog out. I think I ran a 4.4 back to my little makeshift studio because everybody's running 4.4s. I was texting one scout, and he's joking that, so we're doing Penn State pro day, because the joke around the NFL is Penn State's field is tilted because they've done so well with testing in recent years, and rightfully so with certain guys like Micah Parsons.
Worked for Micah Parsons, didn't it?
But one thing, Danny, we talked about this earlier in the week, how valuable is it? Obviously, the medical evaluations is by far the most important part. If you were going to list the most important parts of the combine, medical evaluation would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you get down to 10, which is, probably the interviews more than the testing. But the one thing the testing does give you, and this is what Daniel Jeremiah said, is it gives you, everybody's running a 4.4, obviously at wide receiver. Obviously, it's a fast track. Obviously, I wouldn't take it too seriously when comparing it to other years and other classes and that kind of thing. But what you can do is everybody's on the same, fast track. So you can gauge them against each other in this particular draft and know, look, who's the fastest. And the kid from Baylor ran a 4.29. So obviously he can run. I haven't seen him on many top 100 lists or top 150. So, it's still about football. It's still about, with the wide receiver position specifically, I mean, I always look at, who do you look at? You look at Devontae Adams. What does he do well? One of the best route runners in the NFL. I always love watching Stephon Diggs. What does he do? Well, he's one of maybe the best route runner in the NFL. Cooper Kupp having his historic year. What does he do well? Route running. One, can you catch it? Eagles fans know that. 2, can you get separation? Can you get open? It's great if you can run by people. The Eagles already got people that can run by people. They already got people. Can they run routes? Can they do the other stuff? And that's, where I think that kind of stuff gets lost in the combine.
Right, because you can't attach a number to it. But even the number attaching annoyed the snot out of me because the kid from Baylor ran a 4.21, and then hours later they go, well, it's really only a 4.28 because 4.21 would have been the fastest time ever run at the combine, and then they adjusted it to 4.28, which was, again, the fastest that anyone ran yesterday. And your comment on comparing apples to apples is very true. So he was the fastest, and this is all we're talking about here, right? The guys who are going to be selected in this year's draft. What happened previous to it is, I guess you can use it as a source of comparison, but it's not going to help you on draft day. You need to compare those that you're looking at now who are available against each other. But still, you get excited because the guy runs a 4.21 faster. Oh, no. 4.28. It makes you doubt the process. That they go, whoa. That was a little too fast. Let's reevaluate. The clock's the clock. What the hell did you screw up? If you got to change the time, you did something wrong. Is it just the NFL in general going, well, we don't want to say that they're going that fast. John Ross had the fastest time forever. It makes am I really putting any stock into this? Is any of it believable?
Well, that happens every year. So for whatever reason, the official times are the electronic times. So for whatever reason, NFL Network, whatever, they put their clock on it, and it tends to be faster than the final. It happens every year. Somebody runs a 4.4, the final time is 4.48 or something. But yeah, people get really excited. Oh, so he broke the record. It's coming. It's coming that night. It's going to be a little bit slower anytime you're in that range.
If you don't mind me interrupting, coming that night, it takes 2 friggin' hours for them to be able to get the information to the NFL Network?
I've never asked. Maybe I'll ask somebody. I don't know why it takes so long. But it happens every year. It's not new. It happens every year. And generally, I've never seen anybody improve. Never. Not once.
Always seems to get slower.
Yeah. So whatever they're doing on the live broadcast, that should be the complaint, because I've never, and maybe I'm wrong and somebody can bring it up if they can remember, I have never seen anybody get faster when the official times come out. It's always a tick slower, always.
Just a little pet peeve here that I guess I'm whining about, but sorry, it does bother me that you have to, here's your time until it's not his time. Let's evaluate his new time, which is, as John points out, always slower. Then why the hell am I watching it to begin with? Anyway, spent too much time watching it.
Now, that might be the most interesting question. Look, I mean, it's important. We talked about it a little bit with Jalen Hurts and arm strength. It's important to hit the default setting. Like, at quarterback, you got to have the arm strength to be an NFL quarterback. Like, the Eagles believe Jalen Hurts has reached that default level. And after that, it's not important. The rest of the stuff is more important. So, all these guys, by and large, at wide receiver, how deep were we? I can't even, I'm trying to look at the 40s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 ran 4.44 or better. And if you want to compare that to Jalen Reagor's year, he ran a 4.47, which is fast, which is plenty fast enough. So once you hit that default level, then the other stuff is far more important. The stuff I was talking about, the route running, the ability to catch the football, as we know in Philadelphia, and, football IQ and all the stuff Nick Sirianni talks about. So, all right, those guys are NFL level athletes. Now the heavy lifting begins. Can they succeed at their particular position?
All right, and the wide receivers, the 40 time is something that you do put emphasis and should put emphasis on, as you point out. Yeah, but how do you incorporate that into a route? It's a very big plus if you're starting with a tremendous amount of speed to do so. It gives you the chance to separate and get open and give the ability of your quarterback to get you the ball. The quarterbacks also threw yesterday, and I'll tell you, J Mac. Now this is more observational. This isn't, well, what did the clock say? We had been talking about leading up to the combine. This year's quarterback class is below average. I've been saying kind of well below average. Nothing yesterday, and watching the quarterbacks who were there throw deterred me and got me to change my mind. As a matter of fact, it kind of cemented what I believed. Kenny Pickett is the best of the bunch. He should
hand
be.
season. We got to talk about hand size now, Jeff.
That does annoy me maybe even more than the ever-changing times of the 40s. The importance of hand season. And if you watch any NFL Network, they just pound it into the ground all day long. But they're right about the fact that when Joe Burrow went number one, everybody seemed to look right past it. Everyone was ready, willing, and able to go past the fact that Joe Burrow had small hands, and rightfully so. And you saw what Burrow did this year. It's just that they're overemphasized. I'm not going to say it means nothing, but it is so overemphasized. It's ridiculous. He went out and threw yesterday, and yeah, he threw better than anybody else, at least per this football evaluator's eyes. He had the best arm. He had the ability to get it out of there quick. He had the ability to throw it on a dime. Malik Willis threw a couple of really nice long balls, and he's got arm strength for sure, but Pickett was the best quarterback yesterday, and he still should not be a top 10 pick in this draft. There is no quarterback in this draft that should be a top 10 pick.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on that because, I don't like when people get into the group thing in the NFL, and I think it happens too much. In other words, everybody gets together and says this is a bad quarterback draft. I kind of mentioned it was actually Kwesi Adopa Mensa, so I'll give him credit, the new Vikings GM. He had mentioned the other day, because there's a lot of speculation out there. Well, is Minnesota going to move on from Kirk Cousins because he makes so much money? And then they would be in the quarterback market. But, and everybody brought up, well, this is a bad quarterback class. And he was the one. And I mentioned this yesterday. He said, well, you guys were saying the same thing about the Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes quarterback class. Because I think a lot of people forget, Andy Reid got a lot of criticism for going up and what he gave up to get Patrick Mahomes, because most people had Patrick Mahomes in the 20s. It's revisionist history now. He ended up going 10. And Andy took a lot of hits. Like, why are you going up that far, giving up so much for that kid who's going to be there in the 20s? And then Deshaun Watson, there were a lot of questions. Turns out there should have been a lot of questions, but they should have been off-field questions, not on-field questions. And he ended up going 12. And Mitchell Trubisky was the one who got pushed up the board, and we all know how that worked out in Chicago. He's right when he says people called it a bad quarterback draft before the process started, and then there's been this incredible hindsight, trying to throw that in the toilet. I always say I like to own my incorrect picks. I thought Ryan Leaf was going to be a tremendous quarterback. What I didn't have access to was the fact that he was, he had some issues when it came to, whatever you want to call it, mental health, whatever you want to call it. Somebody like me doesn't have that kind of access. You can't interview the kid. He just looked like he could be a star from a physical standpoint, a trait standpoint. And then you go, but then sometimes you go back to the EJ Manuel draft. And that was labeled.
Yeah, could no one say that year that it was a bad quarterback draft? Would that have been all?
Well, and then they were right that year. But the point is, just because a bunch of guys on the internet get together and say it's a bad quarterback draft, you can't limit yourself as an NFL decision maker. You got to do your due diligence. You got to do your own work. You got to figure out, well, can these kids play or not? And to the Eagles' credit, it seems like they're doing their due diligence on all the quarterbacks. And we'll see where they land up. Maybe you're right. Maybe I do know quarterbacks tend to go up the board. There's a lot of quarterback desperation. I do think there will be a quarterback coming off the board, probably in the top 10. It's probably going to be Kenny Pickett. But then again, if Carolina, there's a lot of ifs here. That's the most logical spot, right? Carolina. And then Washington. If they go out and do something in free agency or the trade market, then maybe not. Maybe they do get pushed down the board. So there's a lot of moving parts, but I thought Kwesi was right in saying, look, essentially said, do your own work. Don't be, listening to just because of budget. You see it all the time on social media, Jody, in any part of society. A big group get together and shout everybody else down and say, no, this is the way it is. And good NFL teams do their own work. That's all.
Here's where I disagree with you. It doesn't mean that because a major majority of people, maybe loud people, think something that it's wrong because it's groupthink.
No, sure.
Oh, they can be right. They can absolutely positively be right. And my opinion here in this year's quarterback class is they would be right. There is no franchise quarterback. Hopefully you and I are still doing Birds 365 10 years from now. And when that's the case, I'm going to say, John, how do you and the Minnesota general manager think about that class now? That, you had to take it unto yourself. Well, you're right. You have to take it unto yourself. But when you come to the same conclusion, you don't then say, well, no, because groupthink says that this is bad. I'm going to say that there's a superstar quarterback in this class. Don't dismiss the group when the group is right.
But he didn't dismiss the group, and that's why I brought up, he said, you can't listen to the group. They might be right. He didn't say they were wrong. He didn't say they were wrong. They might be right, and that's why I brought up the E.J. Manuel draft. They might be wrong, and that's why I brought up the Patrick Mahomes draft. He didn't say they were wrong. He said you can't get caught up into that, and that part of it, I think he's right. Now, do I know if Kenny Pickett is going to be a franchise quarterback? Hell no. If you ask me if he is, I'd probably say no. I'd probably say that about everybody. I tend to lean towards the more negative because I've seen more guys fail than guys succeed. But I'm just saying, because a bunch of people get together and say, okay, this group is terrible, I don't necessarily think that's right, because I've seen in the past where they're wrong. That's all I'm saying. Doesn't mean they are wrong. It means there's a possibility. And I think NFL teams that get caught into listening to the commonality, the common narrative, whatever you want to call it, I think those are the bad organizations. Do your own process. And by the way, this is where I give the Eagles credit for, because I think they do. And I do think they do their own process. And if they come to the conclusion that, excuse me, if Kenny Pickett or Matt Corral or Malik Willis is capable of being a high-ceiling quarterback, well, they'll have interest in those players. Ultimately, if you ask me, will they be high? I would probably say no, me personally, because I get caught up in the comment. I mean, I trust my core guys like Daniel Jeremiah and Dane Brugler. These are the guys I trust in the draft. Ed Kratz, as I sit there as he jumps on. Those are the guys I trust. I don't have time to do, and I certainly can't interview these guys in a personal setting. So I just kind of lean on the people I trust. Teams got to go about it a different way, and I agree with that. That's all I'm saying.
No, and I say every team should do their own work. No one should sit down and go, what's the internet think of this quarterback? That general manager should be fired today. Not tomorrow,
and I don't mean
today.
Joe slap what on the internet. I'm talking about the guys I'm talking about. The Jeremiahs and the Mel Kuypers and the guys with a history, and our buddy Rick Saratella and Matt Manicherian and so on and so on and so on. These guys know a lot about football, but they don't have the information NFL teams do unless they're working actively for an NFL team. So there are other sort of curveballs you got to throw into an evaluation, and you'd be surprised how many teams don't have the courage of their convictions and will lean on other people.
Well,
you'd be surprised.
That's the case. Shame on them. All right, as John mentioned, we are punching up our first guest of the day next. He's got to get to a couple of interviews, so we'll spend a couple of minutes with Ed Kratz from Sports Illustrated here on Birds 365.